Welcome to another edition of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Well, it's time for our monthly check-in with Tom Caldwell. He is the chairman of Caldwell Securities in Toronto, and Tom always has insights on the state of the markets and our economy. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you.
Well, as you know, we just got the news about the interest rate hikes. So I got to ask that right off the top. What do you think? It was 100 basis points, so rather on the large side. What do you think's happening there?
Well, I think it's a little bit higher than people anticipated, but it's not killer either way. Everyone knows interest rates are going up. Whether that's the right solution or wrong solution, only time will tell. But it was larger than expected, but it's had minimal effect on the dollar's a little bit stronger as high velocity money will go where the highest short-term rate is. But there weren't dramatic changes in markets as a direct result of it. Some change, yes, but not, oh my gosh, this is a horrendous kind of thing. We all know rates are going up. The $64 question, of course, is, are they going up too late? Very often inflation is already tapering off when governments decide to act. And that's true of so many measures. For example, the inflation numbers, the underpinnings seem to be easing already.
Right.
Housing prices in Toronto seem to be easing already. So they tend to be retroactive. They tend to be after the events have already started to self-correct.
So do you think that this is the right strategy by the central bank?
I guess in a phrase, I don't think it really matters that much. You're increasing interest rates off of a very, very low base, which, by the way, was part of the cause of this inflationary pressure. Easy money to buy houses and to buy condos and to buy anything else you want for literally zero interest. And then printing money, again, rightly or wrongly, during COVID to help people out. So what do you think is going to happen when you start making money cheap and just flooding the system with money? The money will drive up the stock of goods and services in terms of price. So this is government inspired.
So generally, I should have maybe asked this right off the top, but are you feeling good or concerned about Canada's current economic trajectory?
I think the trajectory, in my mind, it relates to other things, not just monetary policy. I think we have to recognize that world trade is being reordered very, very quickly. People are what they call, I think the phrase is onshoring now, shrinking their supply chains because everybody's worried about Taiwan and food out of the Ukraine, et cetera. So everybody's trying to become more independent. So the trading lines are being altered dramatically. Canada has really not had an effective trade policy or indeed a trade voice. And I think we will suffer for that. And that's government that are effectively absentee landlords.
I mean, you raise a good point, and of course, there's been a lot of changes within the Asia Pacific part of the world, where President Biden has created new institutions, new fora to discuss supply chains, but Canada doesn't seem to be included in those discussions. Is that a concern for you?
It is a concern because we are no longer a factor or even considered in virtually any international forum. We are included in everything from G7 onward for historic reasons, not for our current contribution. Canada has a wonderful potential to help the world as a moderate mid-power nation. Brian Mulroney had influence in say. Even Trudeau Sr. had influence in say. We are not seen as that anymore. We just do not have the team required to do it. I was watching, one of these the old National Film Board movies the other day about the United Nations, and had Lester Pearson and had Louis Saint Laurent, and where we had a say in the world. We were involved in the world post World War II. And I look at the caliber of those people, and many people since, by the way,
right,
and compare it to today, and it's quite understandable. We are not listened to, considered. We're not really a contributor in terms of the dialogue or in terms of defense. So many issues. We're just not there. We're really on the sidelines making smart aleck sophomoric comments. That's really what we're there for. And we're going to pay a price for that.
Tom Caldwell is our guest today. We will return to him and some of the other issues facing our economy and country after this break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm here with our guest, Tom Caldwell. He is the chairman of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. Tom, I just want to get back to monetary policy just for a second. Central banks are clearly aiming for a short and soft recession. What's your sense? Is that still doable? Is that possible?
Of course, and you know, it's I think I've said very often, despite my dour comments about our leadership, I'm an optimist underneath all this. I'm not even sure we're going to have a recession. We may have a slowdown, but most of the studies show that central banks have added to the volatility of economic cycles from the Great Depression onward. They usually act late. They're behind the curve. And yes, they can turn a slowdown into a recession. Make no mistake about that. I don't think anybody's too concerned now with rates the way they're going, because we're getting to whatever normal looks like. Right. So it's not really choke off points. We're not talking about John Crow and 18% at this stage of the game. And I think the moderation has already occurred. My hope is both the Federal Reserve in the United States and the Bank of Canada are smart enough to recognize that. Don't overkill, because the volatility that they've caused, and this is documented, by moving rates too high before the economy could absorb it, has been very damaging. So I think they're smart enough to avoid that, I hope.
I'm going to shift gears because I came across this very interesting statistic the other week. According to our recent labor statistics, they indicate that 92% of new job growth in this country is in the public sector. Love to get your reaction to that. Are businesses in trouble? Are they not hiring? What's going on out there?
Well, first off, the number doesn't surprise me. The public sector is becoming omnipresent in almost every area. We need more regulators. That's what really seems to be the goal. I think businesses are prepared to expand. I think the challenge for many businesses right now is getting people to return to work.
Right.
What was an accommodation during COVID is now seen as a fact of life, and people are deciding, well, do I want to come back to work? Now, I'm not necessarily totally in agreement with Elon Musk here that if you don't come back, you're out of a job. But if you're working from home, it's not for you to evaluate the effectiveness of how your work is working out, because you're not participating in the team, contributing to the team, or benefiting from the team. And I can speak to, and most business people can speak to, many, many, many examples of that right now, that it's really hard to get the people working. Now, bit by bit, I noticed, say in our firm, people are drifting back into the office. Our core people have been here throughout COVID, but I think more and more people are starting to come back into the office because they'll become increasingly irrelevant. So where is business? Business really, we're trying to get people back, but failing that, we're going to start looking for different people or new people or whatever. That's going to happen. So I think there's demand there, but there's a concern in Canada about capital investment. For example, capital investment has literally stopped in the oil and gas business, government policy, and it's eased off significantly in the autos as well. So there are areas where the economy is showing the strains of either policy or international trade concerns.
Now, general question with some specific examples for you. Does Canada still work? And, you know, we've seen all the reporting on the passport chaos, airports being a mess. We don't seem to get pipelines approved. How do you see it? Is that seems to be a prime economic issue for us now?
Well, it really is. I mean, I do have to tell you, I am concerned about this. We can't export oil through the West Coast because of objections there. The price of the Trans Mountain has gone from $7 billion to $27 billion just because of obstructionist policies. Quebec won't allow energy to flow across. They're talking about building a liquid natural gas plant in the Maritimes. So where's that going to come from? I guess probably our East Coast, but we can't get gas across the country there. Everybody has an agenda. I think the West, Alberta in particular, has been prejudiced against in many ways. And policy over the years, from both Trudeau the first to Trudeau the second. So there's a lot of factionalism, and you have a government that is catering to special interest groups. We need to have a macro look at this country, and you're quite correct. Are we a country? What do we want to be? Sir Wilfrid Laurier referred to the last century as Canada's century, and it was in many areas. I think we've dropped the ball on that in the 21st century. We really do have to take a long, hard look, and that's what I'd like us to see doing more of that about Canada, and not debasing being proud of being a Canadian, which is what we've had over the last, oh, these terrible things have happened. Get over it. That's history.
Tom, we just discussed pipelines. I do have to ask for your comment on all of the passport offices and the airport chaos. Any thoughts on what's going on there?
Well, it's interesting that the passport office used to be one of the most efficient within the mosaic of government, frankly. You could go there and you'd get your passport on a timely basis. The excuse that's being given, at least some of our people had to go, is people are working from home. Well, the answer is no, they're not. If they're working from home, we couldn't. Now, there is a bump, I guess, in people post-COVID wanting to do some traveling. But clearly, the machine is not working. And this business at the airports, get it sorted out. I mean, I have trips to go on, business trips. I'm not going anywhere. I'm doing everything by Zoom. I'm not going to be standing around an airport for umpteen hours or getting bumped or ending up landing in Three Rivers or something because they were diverted from Pearson. I think we really have to give some serious thought that governments are supposed to have I love this big picture. Everybody wants to be in the UN. It's like Toronto. Fill the potholes. Never mind all the other stuff. Do what your government is supposed to do. Make a city run well. Don't make it more difficult. And the same in federal government. The departments for which you are responsible are not working. Get it sorted out. And I don't know. I don't know where our leadership stands. I don't know who's responsible. Nobody seems to be responsible for anything. We're drifting. But we've got these problems. Get it done. I mean, they're discernible. They're clear. Find out what the problem is and get it fixed. And we don't seem to be able to do that because everybody's working from home, which they're not.
Yeah. So your analysis is that the governments, particularly the federal government, should kind of stick to its basic knitting, make sure it's delivering services properly. Is that part of the issue for you?
I think it's true of all governments. I mean, you look at Toronto. Toronto's an insane city to live in and drive in. A lot of companies aren't locating here anymore. And that has been totally created by the municipal government. I mean, whether it be bike lanes and Ubers and everything else, crazy stuff. People don't drive in the city and don't want to come into town. So it's right at the municipal, the provincial, and the federal governments. Do what you're supposed to do, what you're elected for. Never mind the grand gestures. We're going to have this great policy, or I'm going to have my name attached to some bill. Run the country like you're supposed to. That's what you're elected for. That's what you're paid for. And that's what the civil service is paid to do. Do your jobs. That's all we're asking of people.
Do you have, you probably have advice, and it's proprietary, I get that, but it's kind of a weird time to be investing for people. It's a lot of uncertainty. Are there things generally that you can say that to guide people when they're thinking about investments?
Well, first off, there's no time more uncertain than the present. That's the way life is. And I kind of like periods like this. I like adversity. That's where the bargains are. I was looking at a group of, stand-up Canadian companies, the price earnings ratios are, that is the price multiply, or the earnings multiplied, whatever, to get the price of this, are 2 and 3 times earnings, 4 times earnings. Now, unless you're going to see a significant decline in those earnings, that's cheap.
Yeah.
So if I had to give you my best view of the world, I think the opportunities in terms of investing are here right now. Not to say you can't see another 10% decline, but I think there's more upside in the future than there is downside at these levels, because I do not think we're going to choke the economy off with insane levels of interest rates. The valuations now are based on fear and insecurity. That's where the bargains live.
Yeah, so you think that the bargains are in real estate as well as the markets then?
Well, I mean, real estate is a different market. I'm talking about publicly securities markets. I like the bank stocks, both in Canada and the United States, because they always win. They're a protected species. Some of the resource stocks, energy stocks, I still own. I was looking at even things like Stelco trading at 2 times earnings or 2.5 times earnings. You're not going to have to see a pretty significant decline. Now, real estate, I live in Toronto and also Niagara-on-the-Lake. You are seeing a leveling off of real estate prices there. So that's a slightly different. And real estate works in a long cycle. For example, you could buy a house in Warren Road, that's Forest Hill, one of the better streets in Forest Hill, for $250,000 in 1929. It never got back to that price again until the mid-60s. You had the Depression, you had the war, the rebuild, et cetera. So they're long cycles. Canada is an immigrant city, tons of people coming into the city, adding to the city, but they're taking up condos or people, students here. So, but there's an awful lot coming on stream. So I think you'll see a little bit of a digestion problem. And then there's old guys like me who live in our big old houses that at some point in time, either they're going to have to truck me off to Happy Trails home or to a condo or something. So who's going to be able to afford my house? I don't know.
We're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Tom Caldwell. He's chairman of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. Tom, before the break, you mentioned an interesting thing about our immigration levels and our labor needs. Is that part of the solution, do you see, as maintaining or increasing our immigration levels to deal with some of our labor shortages?
Well, I can't comment on whether they're too high or too low or whatever, because I don't know what the numbers are. Clearly, listen, I'm a first generation Canadian. My father came from Ireland, for example. But that's really built Canada. I mean, the mosaic of this country is tremendous. I'm so grateful when I'm down in Niagara-on-the-Lake to see people coming from parts of the world that are in great turmoil, and you see them having picnics with their family and their kids. They're in a safe country, and you can do and be what you want to do and be in this country by and large. Yes, we are losing some of our freedoms of thought and speech and action. That's part of the world we live in, I think, these days. But you're bringing skills, contact, world knowledge, and ambition to do well. So these are great things. And sometimes people who are born here, we get complacent. We just think, this is an easy country to live in, and we live easy. But someone who's come from a tremendous, I have great regard for immigrants, tremendous courage to leave your family, your friends, your culture, your language in some cases, and start all over. And Canada is a wonderful country. The weather's a little ratty, but other than that, it's a great country. So I think it's going to add, it does add to our economy. Like it or not, it does add. New businesses, new ideas, smart people. I've been interviewing some people recently, and they're all immigrants. Just terrific young people, just terrific. So I'm positive about that.
Yeah, so we seem to be still attracting those young entrepreneurs and hard workers from around the world. That's your experience.
I think so. I mean, I'll give you an example. Artificial intelligence. You know the world capital of artificial intelligence? Toronto. Nobody knows that. Some really smart people, messing about in that area. I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of bright people doing that. So these are people from all over the world, bringing their skills and their ambition and drive, and their commitment to succeed. And I think we get complacent when we're here too long.
Are you at all concerned about? We seem to be hearing this talk of the 7th wave of COVID and so on. Are you concerned about restrictions in the fall having an impact on the economy, et cetera?
Well, the one great casualty out of COVID has been the phrase medical experts. Yeah. They don't exist. Yeah. Everybody's flying by the seat of their pants. I've been hearing all kinds of stories of post-vaccination problems. So a lot of people aren't as compliant as they used to be. People aren't listening to government as much as they could. I mean, I didn't realize until just the other day that monkeypox only affects one sector of the population. I didn't know that, but it's like they're trying to instill panic. So I think governments and the quote so-called medical experts have already shot their bolt. Their credibility is about the same level as politicians. So I don't know. I'm not worried about it. Listen, I was in the office every day during COVID. Another fellow my age, actually is older than me, was in the office every day, rode the subway every day to work. And, we got our vaccinations and drove on and did the best we could and get on with the rest of their life. But I'm not going to be held prisoner either to government statistics or, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. Get on with your life. And if you get it, in fact, these infections decline in impact over time because the severe versions kill off people. They don't spread from there. I'm not worried about it. Listen, you got to die from something. I don't know whether that's it or not.
Well, hopefully not anytime soon. We've got about 30 seconds left. Generally optimistic about the near or medium term for the economy then, Tom?
I'm optimistic about the Western economy, United States and Canada. Canada has some problems because we're not addressing the fundamental issues of who are we, what do we want to be when we grow up, how do we build this country? I mean, those are the discussions we should have, not this Mickey Mouse staring at our navel stuff that governments spend their time at.
Well, with that, we'll leave you be. Tom Caldwell, Chairman of Caldwell Securities, thanks again for being on the program. It's always great to have you. Always some good insights for our viewers. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Always great insights from Tom Caldwell of Caldwell Securities, talking about the interest rate hikes, of course, and some of our other challenges, but also having a basically optimistic viewpoint in the medium term for the Canadian economy. Lots of things for you to consider in your investments, and thank you again for joining us today.